Ask any person on the street to name a jazz saxophone player, and chances are they'd name John Coltrane. The man is so legendary that a church was named after him, and its congregation views him as a saint. His short career was an arc toward spirituality, but in less than 2 decades, he transformed jazz music. He made his mark on cool jazz, was among the top performers of the bebop and hard bop movements, and eventually became a pioneer of free jazz. John Coltrane grew up in North Carolina. He was born in 1926 to John R. and Alice Blair Coltrane, who lived in a small apartment in Hamlet, North Carolina. John's grandparents were both ministers, one in Hamlet and the other in High Point, where the family moved when John was only a few months old. His father, aunt, and grandparents all died within months of each other, leaving only his mother and a cousin to care for him. While attending William Penn High School in High Point, he learned to play the clarinet and alto horn with a local community band. But later he switched to saxophone after falling in love with the music of Lester Young, Dexter Gordon, and Johnny Hodges. Just after he graduated high school in 1943, the family moved to Philadelphia, and a few months later, his mother bought him an alto saxophone. By the age of 19, he was already gigging as a professional musician in a trio with piano and guitar. On June 5, 1945, John's life changed forever when he saw Charlie Parker play live. From then on, music would be his devotion.
Last days of the bitter battle for Okinawa, costliest of the Pacific War.
World War II was still raging, so in order to avoid the draft, Coltrane enlisted in the Navy. He shipped off to Pearl Harbor, Hawaii in late 1945, and he was permitted to join the base's swing band, the Melody Makers, without obtaining a musician's rating. Because this was an all-white band, Coltrane was treated as a guest performer, but by the end of his service in August of 1946, John Coltrane had taken on a leadership role within the band. He returned to Philadelphia having earned a few medals, and at the end of the war he found a thriving jazz scene had emerged. John used the GI Bill to enroll in the prestigious Granoff School of Music, and he continued to pursue lessons and play gigs with the likes of King Colax and Jimmy Heath after the funds ran out. These next 4 years would cement 2 important elements in his life: a rigorous dedication to learning and practicing his instruments, and a spirituality found through music. The music of legends like Coleman Hawkins and Ben Webster spoke to Coltrane in ways he didn't fully comprehend, and he embraced the thinking and methods of Philly pianist and composer Hassan ibn Ali. He began to approach his playing with an almost mythic dedication. According to the great sax player Jimmy Heath, Coltrane would practice for 25 hours a day. By the late 40s, a 20-something Coltrane was playing gigs with his teenage idol Charlie Parker, and in the early 50s he was playing in bands with leaders like Johnny Hodges and Dizzy Gillespie. It was Dizzy who got Trane to switch to the tenor sax. In 1955, then 29-year-old John married Juanita Grubbs, a convert of Islam who had taken on the name Naima. Naima had a 5-year-old daughter named Antonia, who would later be called Saida. Also in 1955, Coltrane got a call from the great Miles Davis, who asked Coltrane to join a group that would become known as the First Great Quintet. This band, with Red Garland on piano, Paul Chambers on bass, and Philly Joe Jones on drums, recorded a string of 4 classic jazz albums between 55 and 57: Cookin', Relaxin', Workin', and Steamin'. In 1956, John, Naima, and Saida moved to the Upper West Side of New York. By April of 1957, Coltrane was several years into alcoholism and a heroin habit, and Miles, himself a recovering addict, fired John from his band. This was a serious blow to Coltrane's promising career, and his story could have ended there. But he had a spiritual awakening during this time. He was determined to continue playing and elevate others through music. He returned home to Philly for a month to clean up and quit cold turkey. It was fellow North Carolinian Thelonious Monk who offered Trane a second chance, gigging with him at the Five Spot Cafe. Coltrane, having taken on a new outlook on life, threw himself into his work playing live and recording with Monk, as well as working on his own music. His second album, Blue Trane, was recorded at the beginning of 1958. Blue Trane featured all tracks written by John except one, and it showed a new direction for his playing. The album went to #1 on the Billboard Jazz chart that year. Coltrane was eventually invited back to the Miles Davis Group, which had now become a sextet with the addition of Julian Cannonball Adderley. This period produced the landmark album Milestones, which would have been impressive by itself had the group not followed it up with the seminal 1959 masterpiece, Kind of Blue. Though the album features Davis compositions and is his record, Coltrane's playing helped make Kind of Blue the best-selling jazz album of all time, going platinum 5 times. Just 2 weeks after recording Kind of Blue, Trane began recording tracks for a new album of his own. It wasn't just another jazz record. The result was the groundbreaking 1960 album, Giant Steps. The sheer audacity and virtuosity of Giant Steps make it one of the most influential jazz recordings of all time, a rite of passage for saxophonists. The unique phrasing that would be coined sheets of sound, present on some of the Davis-Coltrane collaborations, was in full force here, and the rapid-fire major third chord changes in the title track gave the album its name. Giant Steps, radical as it was at the time, was only a beginning for John Coltrane. In my next video, we'll look at the remaining 7 years of his life, and how his music transformed to take John Coltrane to the head of the avant-garde.